right, so today we're going to talk about some interval identification. Now we have intervals in our pieces all the time, and it's just a matter of identifying them to make them a little bit easier to play. So the first one that we're going to look at is one that you know probably pretty well and can recognize fairly easily. So you can do this in any clef, but we will start out in the treble clef. So the first interval is going to be a major second. And a lot of times we identify that by capital M2. So the major second is when you go from one note, like middle C for instance, and then you go up a whole step. So in this case, this is called a melodic second. Now it's called melodic because these notes happen at different times. If the notes were right next to each other like this, we would call that a harmonic second because the notes are played at the same time. So remember, a melodic interval, the notes happen at different times. Harmonic intervals happen at the same time. Now this one is a little bit strange looking because it's a second and the notes aren't able to be exactly on top of each other the way that we're used to seeing harmonic intervals. So in this case, these are whole notes and they are harmonic because they are pretty much right on top of each other. They're just very close. This would be the melodic version. So if I were to draw that same interval on a different note, I could start, say here on F and go up to a G. Now that one again would be the melodic second because they are not played at the same time. They're played at different times. Now starting on F with that same interval played harmonically right next to each other like that. Okay, so now the way that we're probably a little bit more used to seeing them is when they are not whole notes. For instance, if I have a second like this, that line looks a little bit funny because I tried to go up and down. Here, let me start that one over. There we go. So that one is a harmonic second, but they're half notes instead. Still the same interval, just on a different key and as half notes instead of whole notes. I could do that same thing as a melodic interval by writing them like this. So the second is pretty straightforward. It's from one note, or I should say the major second specifically, that capital M2. That one's fairly easy to identify because you're going from one note up a whole step. And we're pretty good at finding whole steps. Now one thing that's very important to remember is if you're looking for a major second, it's specifically going up a whole step. So for instance, if I were going to play, say, from an E up to an F, go ahead and find that on your keyboard, on your piano, and tell me if you see, well, I guess you can't tell me because it's a video, but decide if you see anything here that looks like it might have a problem being that major second from an E up to an F. So an E to an F is a half step. Now, it's really hard to tell that this isn't a major second by seeing it on the staff like this, on this treble clef, because we don't immediately necessarily see this as a half step until we see it on the piano. So here's the sort of confusing part. This is still a second. It's just not a major second. This is what we call a minor second. And when we talk about minor intervals, we use a lowercase letter. So remember, a major second is up a whole step, and a minor second is up a half step. So some other examples of a minor second could be something like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be from one white key to the next. In fact, they're easier to identify when they are not from one white key to another white key. For instance, you could see something like this. We have a C and a D flat. Now that one's probably a little bit easier to see as a half step because we're used to seeing a white key to a black key as a half step, or opposite a black key to a white key. So I could do something like this. C sharp up to D. Those are both examples of that minor second because they're just a half step. Okay, so the big takeaway, a major second is one note up a whole step, and the minor second is one note up a half step. But whenever you have one note to the next line or space, it's always some type of second. It's just a matter of identifying if it's a major second or a minor second, half or whole step or half step. Okay, so the next interval we're going to look at is the major and minor thirds. So we'll get our new staff going here. Now the thirds, we often call those skips. So as you probably remember, our third can be something like this. There's that melodic third, or we could have that same interval represented as a harmonic third. Now these ones, these were both major thirds. In fact, I think what we can do is we'll just label them right underneath. That'll be a little bit more straightforward. These are both major thirds. So the easy way to identify the third is by seeing that both of the notes match. And what I mean by that is one of them is, or I should say both of them, are within a space. They don't have a line going through them, and they both look like that. So these are both space notes. Another option, another example, could be something like this. We could go from A up to C. Now, this looks the same as these ones, right? It's just a space note going to another space note. But this interval is no longer major. This is a minor third. Now we can talk about how to tell the difference between a major third and a minor third. Okay, so the major third is from one note up 4 half steps. Now that's a little bit trickier to think through. So what I'm going to do is draw us a little keyboard here so that we can visualize it together. Now if you want, you can sit and watch this at your piano, and maybe you'll be able to find the notes a little bit more easily on your piano keyboard. But in case you're watching this away from the piano, or if you want to follow right along with where I'm looking, I'll just have this piano here ready for us. I'm not going to shade in the black keys, but you can see where they are. So here's our example. Well, actually, we'll go back to this one, this major third. We have it from an F up to an A. So remember, a major third is 4 half steps. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our major third. Okay, so now the next one, the minor third, this one is 3 half steps. So we've got A and C. 1, 2, 3 half steps. That's how we know that's a minor third. Now, if you recall from your technique exercises, when you transform something major, like a 5-finger pattern, into a minor 5-finger pattern, all you're doing is taking that third note, the interval of the third, and bringing it down a half step. And that's the same thing that's going on here. If you have a major third, it's 4 half steps. If you have a minor third, it's 3 half steps. So all you did was take a major third and bring it down 1/2 a step to transform it into a minor third. Now we can also have minor thirds with black keys or major thirds with black keys. So let's look at a major third with a black key first. We've got D, and now we know that we have to go up 4 half steps to make this a major third. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and that was an F sharp. And it's as easy as that. So that was a major third. Okay, now we can do that same thing, but make it a minor third. So we've got our D again, and we go up 1, 2, 3, to just an F natural, a regular old F. And that's our minor third. Okay, now here's something that's a little bit strange. This is kind of a pitfall that can come up. I'm going to divide this off so we can talk about this in a different section. Now, sometimes we count something like this. We go up 4 half steps and we go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we think, okay, I know I need this note here. Now there's 2 ways that we can talk about that note. We can call it an F sharp or a G flat. But how do we know which one we need? Right? We haven't talked about how to decide that yet, but there is a very specific way. So to decide which one you have to call this, you write the note out first. So you draw what looks like a third to you, and then you add the black key. So this is the note we have to have. It's some type of F. Now our options for this note was F sharp, they were F sharp or G flat. Now we know it has to be an F because that's what looks like a third. It's going from a space note up to the next space note. Therefore this has to be F sharp. Now so you can see what it looks like the other way, the incorrect way. This would be what it would look like if it was called a G flat. But this no longer looks like a third because that note has the line going through it. So that can't be the way, we can't have it like that. Sorry, my paper was getting a little crooked there. So it has to be that distance that looks like a third. This one looks like a fourth, so that's incorrect. That's not a major third. Even though the notes sound the same, it doesn't look like a third. So that's our major third right there. Okay, let's go on to the perfect fourth. Now, kind of all these same rules just continue to apply with the fourth. It's the same idea. You can start on one note, go up from 1, 2, 3, about 4, and there's your perfect fourth. Now I think the fourth is a little bit trickier to identify because it doesn't match. You've got a space note going to a line note, or you could do it like this, a line note going up to a space note. Those are both fourths, but they don't match. It's line to space or space to line. So we call those P4, or perfect fourths. Now here's the interesting thing. With the seconds, we had the major second and the minor second. And with thirds, we had the major third and the minor third. Now we're all of a sudden with the perfect interval. It's not major or minor, it's what we call perfect. And there's no way to change this. It's always perfect. There's no major or minor version of the fourth. They're all just called perfect. No changes can happen. So that's actually the same way the fifth works as well. So our last interval will be the perfect fifth. And the perfect fifth, like the major third, has notes that match. So you've got a space note going to another space note, But the important thing is here is you've skipped over a space in the middle. So you've got your space note going up to a space note, skipping over that note in that space in the middle. And similarly to the third, you can start on a space or a line. It doesn't really matter. So I can go from this line note, skip over that line, and go up to the next one. And these are all perfect fifths. Okay, so the important things to remember with all of this are these. The major second is a whole step up. The minor second is a half step up. The major third, both of the notes will match, and it goes up 4 half steps. The minor third, both of the notes will match. It looks very similar to the major third, but it has to be 3 half steps instead. And then we've got the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth. These ones don't have a major or minor friend that go with them. They're just perfect by themselves. And the perfect fourth does not match. It goes from a line to a space or a space to a line. And the perfect fifth does match. It goes space to space with that one skipped over in the middle. Or it can go from a line to a line with that one skipped over in the middle. Okay, so those are our most commonly seen intervals as of right now. So watch this video and let me know if you have any questions about this. We'll touch base on it if you have any questions, and I hope you enjoyed.